Hello. Welcome back to the clinicaltrialsguru.com. It's been an extremely busy week for me. Been meeting with clients, have been doing a lot of getting studies, getting them out to my various different clinics, the ones I advise with, the ones I work at, things like that. Just doing a lot of business development, and consulting type of deals. But as I've been meeting with people and interacting with people, of course, through email, which you can do, dan@theclinicaltrialsguru.com, I got about 3 different topics I want to cover today, and we'll see how long it actually gets me to get through it. That will allow me to determine whether this will be a video or a podcast or both. So for those of you who don't know, go to Stitcher.com. You can check out the Clinical Trials Guru app on Stitcher.com. You could download the show or just watch on YouTube or subscribe. But anyways, the first one is in regards to, it's actually a couple of pretty good questions combined in one. And it says, "Hey Dan, thanks for the emails. I'm reaching out to you. I would like your opinion on the impact and acceptance by sites, meaning acceptance of research sites, for 3 things. So reaching out and pre-qualifying patients through social networks like TrialReach." I don't know too much about TrialReach other than the fact that TrialReach is more of an app that patients can download and get notified of sites. They can opt in to getting alerted of when research studies are available in their area. The problem with an app like TrialReach, and again, I don't know the people there, I haven't used it all that much. The problem with something like TrialReach is pretty much the same thing as the problem with just raising general awareness of clinical research to study participants. If someone doesn't know what a clinical trial is, they're not going to be looking for something like TrialReach, and they're not going to want to opt in. What TrialReach has done a good job at is partner with different content platforms. Like, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe they did something with WebMD. As an example, let's say WebMD writes a good article on diabetes. WebMD gets tons of traffic. TrialReach has an ad, I believe, on the side where they say, if you're interested in learning more about diabetes trials, check us out. And so that's one way they're raising awareness, but they're still not solving the fundamental problem, which is that patients don't look at clinical research as an alternative. And we still need the PIs, the physicians, referring patients to clinical research. So the biggest referral sources of study participants in this industry is physicians. And we would like to get, and only about 10% of physicians actually have referred a patient to a clinical trial. So what we would like to do is educate the patients themselves so that they can ask their physicians about clinical research participation, or they can go and look themselves on clinicaltrials.gov or just Google search in their area for clinical studies in their area. But definitely social networking is good for clinical research recruitment. I think we're just barely in the infancy, at least for this industry, of just starting to learn how to use social networking for clinical research recruitment. I wrote a really good book on it. It's only $2.99, How to Recruit Clinical Trial Study Participants. It's on Kindle. Go check it out. The next question is, what do I think of collecting new types of data directly from patients, like wireless sensors, apps, potentially also move some of the diagnostic activity to or near a patient's home? So I've dealt with a few studies where they give the patients e-diaries to take home. And I could say what they are. They were constipation studies. So the patient were given an e-diary. It looked like a tablet but it's way more cumbersome than this phone. It was like one of those old school phones, like kind of like a brick, so it wasn't that convenient to carry around, and it was very glitchy, at least on these several studies I've done, and patients reported they had issues because they were required to log into the diary each time they had a bowel movement, and as you can imagine, that could get a little annoying. And it could also be it's very common for patients to forget to do that. It's understandable. So as far as collecting data directly from patients, I like it if we can make the technology and the data collection as passive as possible. So like sensors and wireless sensors would be good if the patients agree to that. But if it's anything that the patient has to enter themselves, we're just switching the data entry now from the research site to the patient. When the technology becomes easier to integrate and it just becomes more passive, just like those apps on your phone, like a pedometer that will record your steps without you actually doing anything, those will work. So if we can do something like that for the different types of data sets that we're trying to collect, and I think that will happen as Google Glass starts coming out and as different technologies, we're going to be into the new big thing in tech is going to be wearable devices. So I think there's a potential there. I think we're still very early, but it's definitely good to be thinking about these kind of things. And the final question was, based on new types of data, potentially establishing new and different type of endpoints that more closely reflect outcomes relevant to patients' quality of life. So when it comes to quality of life in research, they used to do a bunch of surveys, and they still do surveys, where they try to collect enough data from different patients to ask them how they felt that week. Did the drug help them at all in feeling better that week? How is their quality of life? Did they interact with people this week? They try to catch these secondary endpoints, which are not necessarily the primary safety and efficacy of the drug, whether it works, whether it's safe, but how it's affected the patients in their lifestyle. This is very much related to the second one. If this type of endpoint, this type of data can be measured passively, and I think they're going to be getting that way more and more so as wearable technologies come out, then it will be a lot easier and the data will be obviously a lot better. Of course, these are a bit further out into the future, and as the data collection shifts to the patient, the role of the site changes towards one of just kind of encouraging the patient to be compliant with the clinical research, coaching patients rather than capturing data. I don't think the research site is ever going to be completely eliminated, but the role will eventually transform in some instances, and I've done a video on this. So Pfizer did a virtual clinical trial for people with overactive bladder. I did an interview with Craig Lipset on the show. Just go on my search bar if you want to watch that. I did 2 interviews with him, actually. Go on there and type in Pfizer virtual trial. And I did 2 interviews with Craig, who's the chief of director. He's the director of clinical research at Pfizer. And I did a bunch of other commentary videos on this topic. I think for some medical conditions, you will be able to do this. You will be able to kind of do more virtual clinical trials where the patients are collecting their own data, and then they just go to a clinic to get lab draws. But I think for most medical conditions, especially serious medical conditions, you're talking cancer, diabetes, mental illnesses, Alzheimer's, you're not going to be able to have virtual clinical trials, I don't think. I think the site staff is going to need to be there. I think the niche is always going to be there as far as research clinics that specialize in certain therapeutic indications. They're always going to be needed because it takes a certain set of knowledge to communicate to those kind of study participants and to understand those disease types and those particular the particular data points that the sponsors are looking for when it comes to those kind of diseases. Of course, I'm not saying that's never going to be outsourced completely, but for right now, this is well off into the future, 20 years maybe, even for a simple study. And Pfizer, despite the virtual trial kind of failing, I mean, they didn't enroll as many people as they thought they could get. When you talk to Craig Lipset, he's very bullish on it, and they're going to keep trying, and they're doing it again. So it's obviously not going anywhere, the idea of a virtual clinical trial, but I don't think the research clinic will ever be eliminated, especially not for the more complex medical conditions. I had another question. This was from someone who shall remain anonymous, but he was talking about the different types of people that exist in this industry, and this is more for the doctors out there or the physicians who have large medical practices, and then they get approached by business people like me, like myself, although I'm not shady, I'm not one of the shady ones, who will approach them because they have a big practice and they already have an office space, and they'll say, hey, let's partner 50-50, I'll build a clinical research business for you, and you just keep doing what you're doing. You're a doctor, you have a successful practice, just you have the patients, so you'll enroll the patients, we already have the office space, we'll use your staff, your equipment, I'll get the studies, and we'll have a clinical research business. And these partnerships can be good at times, but you should never, if you're the physician and you're paying for all the bills, you have all the overhead, you have all the patients, you're doing all the work, you're paying the staff, you should never partner 50-50 with somebody. They got to be bringing something to the table. Now, if you're a startup doctor looking to get started, you don't have any of this that we've discussed, or you have just some of it, a partnership may be an option. And even a partnership in the previous case might be an option, provided that the other side brings something to the table other than just setting up the business. Because at that point, I believe that partnership's going to be one in which the doctor's doing all the work, and then the business guy is just coming in and taking the money and splitting it with the doctor and getting studies and things like that. So I think there is a place for partnerships, but I think they should be, and be careful, because there's a lot of people out there approaching doctors who are thinking about starting research and wanting to partner 50-50, but they don't want to put up any of the risk. So I'm not saying don't partner with anyone, but make sure they're at least putting up some of the risk themselves, like that they're handling the cost. Make sure they're contributing somehow to justify that 50-50. Otherwise, I mean, it only takes 6 months to a year to really start up a research clinic. After that, you don't really need the startup anymore. The business should be profitable and paying for itself. So be very careful. I do a lot of partnerships with sites, but I usually come in as an advisor or as a minority owner, never 50-50, unless it's a startup and I'm putting in like half of the cost myself. At that point, we're just investors like the other person. So there is a place for 50-50 partnerships in research, but only if the business people are actually providing cash and paying for all the expenses just like you are. Never put up all the money and do all the work and partner with someone 50-50. If you're going to do that and you just want someone to bring studies, either hire them as a consultant or partner with them maybe like 20% or 10%. Make it work for you, but just it's a little bit of common sense, but also I know people are intimidated when they're starting a new research clinic and they don't think they can do it on by themselves, which often is the case too. I mean, you may need a consultant, and I can help you with that, and you may need a partner, but what I'm saying is be smart about it. If you're going to go 50-50, make sure they're putting up a good amount of the money or paying for all the costs. There's a site I partner with, 50-50. We're putting up all the costs. So I think that's fair. Whenever you have a relationship where one party's contributing a lot more than the other, yet the profits are distributed evenly, you're going to have someone feeling like they're getting ripped off, and ultimately that business will fail. So don't do that. I had another question. This one's related to negotiating budgets. And I think this will be the last one to wrap it up. Someone who's setting up an SMO, and this is a good question, but they will be anonymous. We're a small SMO that's just in the startup process. We found your videos and we love them. Thank you. We've just contracted with a site that has recently started a trial. The PI is in over his head. We will be managing the trial moving forward. He did not negotiate the budget at all. I would like to approach the sponsor to renegotiate the budget. Have you any experiences with this? Any pointers? And I said yes. Oftentimes that's the case. PIs just take on studies, especially if they're new to research, because they just want to get their feet wet. And that's fine. And it's not their main business. But for these SMO people, it's their main business. And they want the PI negotiating budgets. What I would do going forward for you at your SMO, negotiate all the budgets yourself. In this case, what I told this person was, it absolutely makes sense to renegotiate the budget if you can justify why it would benefit the sponsor. They usually tend to listen. Basically, you would like to tell them why you haven't been recruiting and relate it to the budget somehow. So there's got to be a pain point there somewhere in the budget where you can point to it and say, hey, this thing, or maybe this, and this are the reasons why we haven't been recruiting well. Let's change it. Let's tweak the budget a little. Guarantee you we're going to start recruiting better. Sometimes the sponsors will not do it. At that point, I think you still need to randomize a patient or two and then try to renegotiate again. So oftentimes they won't listen to you until you randomize a few patients. So they're not going to listen to you if you're just screen failing people left and right. But randomize a few patients and then approach them. They replied back, "Thank you for the advice and getting back to me so quickly. The doctor has already screened 3 patients and enrolled 1. My approach would be to tell them we can't really afford to continue enrolling if we can't come to an agreement. What do you think? We normally don't take over for doctors once they have started a study, so this is a little different for us." Okay, I get it. So that's an okay strategy to use. You can afford to continue enrolling if we can't come to an agreement, but get more specific. Look in the budget. There's a line-by-line items, and I don't know what indication you're doing for this study, but look at the particular, maybe there's a couple of procedures or a couple parts of the protocol that are particularly difficult, and you can find in the budget that maybe they're not compensating that well for it. Adjust those, adjust the overhead, tell them, hey, if we tweak these things, we can do a much better job. And it looks like you enrolled 1 patient already, so maybe enroll 1 more and then approach them. But I would definitely continue pursuing this so that you can actually have a profitable research clinic. And I guess that'll be it for today. We went pretty long. I was expecting to do like a 3-minute video, and it went on close to 20 minutes. I want to give a shout out to my clinical trial guru producers: South Coast Clinical Trials, Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, PTNR, Erdhart Clinical Research, Tradestone LLC, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, Kulkarni Law Firm, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigator Research Group, Phlebotomy Services, Atria Clinical Research Management, Rheumatic Disease Clinical Research Center, Clinexus Research LLC, and Coastal Connecticut Research LLC. Thank you guys, and if you want to be a clinical trial guru producer, let me know. $99 for a lifetime membership. I'm only accepting $100, and that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again. As always, send me your questions. I'll keep you anonymous. Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.